I recently leveled a SpiritBorn on the pre-release for Diablo Vessel of Hatred. And of course, in this video, I aim to show you exactly the best way, I think, to level a SpiritBorn. Let's get into it. Now, a couple quick caveats. I do think SpiritBorn is insanely strong for leveling. It's very fast, especially if you're now already unlocked. You get those 10 points to start out with, and 10 points on the SpiritBorn is really juicy. It's almost ideal for the start of the game. Now, one small disadvantage of starting Season 6 with a SpiritBorn is that none of the Codex of Power aspects for the SpiritBorn will be unlocked. They are all inside the zone of Nahatu. So as you progress through the campaign, you will get access to these dungeons, and through those dungeons, you'll get aspects specific to the SpiritBorn. However, you will still have access to the full Codex of Power, that, cross-class aspects that will certainly help. We'll deep dive into that into this video. Now, if you have Renown unlocked already on your account, you will have 10 points to allocate immediately upon loading the new season. But I'm going to show you exactly how I would allocate those points even if you didn't have that Renown going into Season 6. So first up, I'm going to put 1 point into Withering Fist. This basically just applies some poisoning damage over 6 seconds, and the third attack will cause a slow. 1 point into Enhanced Withering Fist. You gain 1 vigor per nearby enemy for every nearby enemy poisoned by Withering Fist, up to 10. Our third point we're going to put into Stinger, which actually just does flat AoE poison damage, but if you go Enhanced Stinger, you apply 50% of the base damage as poisoning over 6 seconds. And then lastly, we're actually going to go Advantageous Stinger. The Stinger strikes a vulnerable enemy. It'll heal you for 10% of your max life. But more importantly, if you are healthy, it makes the enemy vulnerable for 3 seconds. Now, vulnerable is just a 20% damage multiplier. So being able to apply it with every hit, as long as you're healthy, which should be pretty easy to do, you'll apply vulnerable for 3 seconds. Now, coming back up to Withering Fist, we're going to apply Sharp Withering Fist. Withering Fist's third attack spreads poison into nearby enemies, but more importantly, hitting a vulnerable enemy will also spread that effect to all hit. So just as long as you hit Stinger once, you're going to apply vulnerable. You go back and apply more Withering Fists, and it will spread your poison damage and actually give you 1 vigor per second for every enemy that is applied with this poisoning damage, which is great. Good vigor generation at the start of the game. With just those 6 points, we've unlocked the focus part of the tree. This part is insane. You're going to pick up 1 point into Ravager, which basically just adds an extra attack to all your attacks for 6 seconds. However, we can extend that duration using Enhanced Ravager. Ravager's duration is extended by 2 seconds per kill while active. You kill a lot. You kill very fast during the campaign. So keeping up Ravager during the campaign will be really easy. You're going to get lots of kills as you're leveling. But more importantly, Measured Ravager. While Ravager is active, your core skills instantly dash your target, which is huge. This is like such a good thing for leveling. And your vigor generation is increased by 30%. So all those Withering Fists that are triggering and applying poison and giving vigor per second, that amount will be increased by 30%. Once we have those points allocated, we're going to go back and apply a couple more points in the Stinger just to increase that base damage before we unlock the next part of the tree here, which is the defensive skills. We're going to put 1 point in the Scourge, which applies a fear and a slow and a poison. We're going to pick up Enhanced Scourge. Each time you hit an enemy with Scourge, you get increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies. This is just a flat damage multiplier as you're leveling. It's not going to have the most insane uptime until you get certain uniques, but it has decent uptime. But more importantly, we get Reinforced Scourge. This is huge while leveling. This lets you cast Scourge, and you immediately get a ton of vigor per second. This is actually 60%, not 100% on live. But still, that amount is also increased by Ravager. And that will give you some really good uptime on spamming Stinger. Now to unlock the next part of the tree, we need 16 points. We have 14 points spent, so we're going to put 2 more points in the Stinger and cap that off at level 5. Again, that's going to be spamming most of the time, so we want that damage as high as we can get it. And then we're coming down into the potency part of the tree. We're going to pick up Touch of Death, which allows us to strike an enemy once every 15 seconds, dealing poison damage over 9 seconds. And then once that effect expires, a swarm hatches that seeks enemies, dealing 10% damage per hit. We're going to pick up Enhanced Touch of Death, which causes the Touch of Death to heal us. And then when it expires, it heals us the remaining amount. But more importantly, Invasive Touch of Death. The Touch of Death swarm bursts every second, applying 30% of its base damage over 6 seconds to surrounding enemies. So you're going to have these 3 Touch of Death swarms sort of following you around, dealing tons of poison damage. This is really, really strong for leveling. I really like Touch of Death as a leveling skill. You want to spam this off of cooldown if you can, so you maximize those 3 swarms that are following you around. They do really good damage. They do such good damage, in fact, that we're going to apply few more points, max that out, Touch of Death, get that 5 out of 5 before we unlock the ultimate part of the tree. Here, we're going to select the Devourer. The Devourer is super duper strong while leveling. He just follows you around, one-shotting everything. Insanely strong. We're going to pick up Harmonious Devourer. As it emerges, Devourer launches Toxic Globs. So as long as you put Devourer on like a elite or a boss, it'll basically one-shot most everything that you're going to experience in the campaign. And then finally, Exalted Devourer. The Devourer is active. Non-bonus enemies' remaining life becomes poison. They die instantly and release a pestilent swarm that deals 30% base damage through enemies as it passes through. After we pick up that, we're going to come in to put 1 point in resolution, 1 point in sustenance. And it's really just to unlock this really powerful tier here called Intricacy. Upon casting an ultimate skill, the last potency defensive focus skill you use is reset and can be cast for free for 3 times in the next 5 seconds. This lets us either spam Scourge to get really good CC damage uptime and basically perma CC with fear, or just be able to spam 3 Touch of Death, get our Touch of Death. If you don't have all 3 little swarm bursts following you around, you can use this before your ultimate and get 3 Touch of Death swarms following you. Finally, we're going to put 2 more points into the Devourer. That will just increase its damage, but more importantly, decrease its cooldown. And then lastly, this is where I'm seeing a lot of streamers and content creators are getting a little confused, I think, in this section, because the Devourer specifically says, while it's active, the remaining life become poison. They will die instantly and will unleash a pestilent storm that deals 30% damage to enemies who pass it through, right? So this is a really good effect. However, it doesn't work if you pick up Noxious Resonance. Noxious Resonance will remove your poison if you hit a critical strike. Thus, Exalted Devourer will not go off because they will not be poisoned for the rest of their remaining life. So you do not want to pick up Noxious Resonance. We're going to pick up Vital Strikes. This is a flat 45% damage multiplier, especially in the early game, on top of healing you and on top of giving you 5 vigor for every enemy hit. And again, the reason that Vital Strikes is so darn good is because we get Stinger with an advantageous Stinger. So everything we hit, as long as we're healthy, we're going to be applying Vulnerable too. So this effect of removing Vulnerable is not a problem whatsoever because we can just reapply it absolutely immediately. Is a super strong multiplier while leveling. Now, before I get into the next points, I'm going to talk about quickly, as you're leveling through the campaign, you're going to be keeping your eyes peeled for the new dungeons, specifically for 2 aspects. You're going to be looking for the Insatiable aspect, which comes from completing the Betrayed Tomb in the Hantu. So keep your eyes peeled for the Betrayed Tomb in the Hantu. But basically, kills extend your Touch of Dust swarms by 0.2 seconds. When a swarm is replaced early, it bursts for 100 to 450% of the damage it would have done. So this makes casting Touch of Death before using the Devourer to get those free 3 casts of Intricacy for the Touch of Death. It makes it super duper strong because every single time your Touch of Death swarm expires, it's going to be replaced and it's going to explode. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I already have 3 stacks. I better not cast another Touch of Death because it's not going to help me. So, and this makes it super strong while leveling. But more importantly, you're going to be keeping your eyes peeled for the aspect of Pestilence, which comes from beating the Hollowed Stones in the Hantu. This makes it so that Stinger spawns a Pestilent Swarm at its target location, dealing up to 150% of the base damage per hit, and causes this Pestilent Swarms to last 100% longer. So again, these are Codex of Power aspects. These are some things you can unlock by doing the dungeons. You just have to get to the point where you unlock those dungeons in the Hantu. And then once you get just these 2 aspects, you are popping off. Something else you want to keep your eye out for is the aspect of Infestation, which causes your Centipede skills to have a lucky hit chance to spawn a swarm, and it causes those swarms to deal your base damage over 6 seconds for that poison. But again, not super required. This is a drop only aspect. So this is only going to be an aspect that drops on the ground, not like the Codex of Powers that we just talked about. Another Codex of Power aspect I'm going to recommend you go get immediately is the aspect of Umbral, which basically says restore 1 to 8% of your primary resource when you crowd control an enemy. And this applies to anytime you apply a new crowd control effect. So anytime we apply our 3rd hit of Withering Fist, which applies a slow, we're going to get a little bit of primary resource back. Also, anytime we apply our Scourge, which is a fear, it will crowd control and apply a little bit of Aspect of Realm. We'll get just a little bit of resource back. And again, this is an aspect that all you got to do is the Champion's Demise in the Dry Steppes. You can actually do this before you even start up the campaign. This will already be unlocked, especially if you've already played the Diablo 4. Now, the other thing I'm going to have you guys look out for immediately while you're leveling, while you're getting gear, is your helmet, your chest piece, and your boots, they can all roll a stat called Vigor per second. They can roll up to 2 on each slot with terrible levels of gear. This will make the leveling experience and being able to spam Stinger that much stronger. And again, through Ravager, we also get 30% increased Vigor generation. We want to eventually get ourselves to the point where we do not have to cast Withering Fist that much. We want to be spamming Stinger. It does way better damage. Now, also at level 15, you unlock your primary Spirit Hall. We're going to pick up Gorilla in this case. It's just a little bit of extra defensive layer while you're leveling through the campaign, and it will have some added benefits in the skill tree later on. At level 30, you unlock your second aspect, and of course, I'm going to recommend you get Jaguar. Jaguar will increase your maximum ferocity by 1, so you'll get +1 max ferocity, and you get 1 stack of ferocity anytime you kill a enemy or damage a boss. So at all times, basically, you'll be walking around with 5 stacks of ferocity at level 30, and that gives you a flat 25% attack speed, which is just GG. Now, coming back to the skill tree, after we've fully juiced Intricacy, we're going to finish off Devour again. More ranks in Devour increases the damage Devour does, but more importantly, the cooldown reduction of Devour. We're going to pop back in the Scourge and fully max that out. It's 10% multiplicative damage per level. Juicy, juicy. At this point, we're going to start picking up some damage, small passives. Now, this skill tree isn't up to date, but right here, there will be a node that lets you get certain benefits by the weapon type you're wielding. Of course, there's one that says Glaive and gives you 5% lucky, but while you're leveling, you're not really going to worry about the weapon type you have. You're going to put 1 point into that, and then this point will actually be the apex. So we're just going to pretend that that's what this is, and we'll put 3 points into that. So that'll give us 9% increased vulnerable damage and double that versus elite. So 18% damage multiplier for vulnerable. And again, everything is going to be vulnerable because of Stinger and more vulnerable damage multiplier that we're getting through Vital Strikes. So as you're leveling your character, you know, something to look for on your weapon, something to look for on your jewelry is to get some more vulnerable additive damage. Again, this is not the end of the day. It's just like if you're looking to really min-max what stats you're getting on some of your jewelry and your weapons, vulnerable damage can be very, very good. Next, we're going to come down to Ravenous and fully spec this out. It gives us a 7.5 damage multiplier all the time, but 15% damage to help the enemies. This is a nice multiplier for popping Centipede on bosses and elites. Coming up here, we'll put 1 point into Anti-Venom. Not for the Anti-Venom effect. I mean, it's nice, but we don't really want that, especially while leveling through the campaign. But more importantly, to put 3 points in the Nourishment. This increases our poison damage by 9%. It's a 9% damage multiplier for 3 seconds as long as we're healing something. And again, we're applying healing through Stinger. We're applying healing through Touch of Death. So it'll be really healing for loads here. Because Gorilla is our primary Spirit Hall choice, all of our skills are now Gorilla and Centipede skills. So this allows us to pick up this Resilient. So every single time we cast the Gorilla skill, we gain 5% increased life for 10 seconds. But more importantly, we're going to put 1 point into Dominant. We're not knocking anything down yet, so ignore that first part, but we have a 5% chance to execute non-bosses. You'd be surprised how often that really goes off. So just 1 point in the Dominant, because that 5% value does not scale regardless of how many ranks you put in it. And we're not knocking anything down yet, so definitely don't scale that piece yet. Then we're going to come down and put 3 points into Oppressive. That is just a 12% increased damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Things will have slow because of Withering Fist. Things will be feared because of Scourge. So the chance of you CCing something is pretty good. Next up, I'm going to recommend you get Potent. Potent is probably the strongest passive that the SpiritBorn has to offer. It is a flat 30% damage multiplier with 0 duration. So it just lasts. It's just remembered on your target. And of course, we have Ravager as our Jaguar skill, and that duration gets super extended because of kills. But even on bosses, just popping Ravager off cooldown will apply this effect of Potent at least 5 times. So the longer the fight lasts, the better Potent becomes. Next up, we're going to start putting points into Supremacy. Any enemies you kill while the ultimate is active, and the ultimate does last a good while. Supremacy is probably the best on the Devourer. And you get this damage stack up to 30%. And when the ultimate ends, you gain 5 stacks of Supremacy, but you begin to lose a stack every second. So every second you don't have the Devourer up anymore, you start to lose a stack of the Supremacy. You start to lose 3% damage multiplier per second. Very, very strong passive, especially with the Devourer. At this point in the campaign, you might find yourself getting CC'd. If you're not able to dodge, if you're not evading properly, you might want to pick up a point or 2 into Initiative. This lets you cast Devourer while you're stunned and get yourself out of that stun as you become unstoppable. That point is completely up to you. And then after that, probably just going to recommend to get a little bit more vigor regeneration. We can pick up Vigorous and get 15% increased vigor regeneration after casting a core skill. And we're going to be trying to spam Stinger here. So Vigorous will have really good uptime on top of Velocity. Generate 3 vigor each second while moving. If you have dealt damage in the past 5 seconds, we're never going to stop moving. So this vigor per second is really, really strong on top of the vigor per second we could potentially get from our gear. And again, the whole point is just to try to cast less Withering Fist. We want to be spamming Stinger as often as we can. The final 2 points, we're going to come back and put those 2 points into Resilient. Casting a Gorilla skill just grants 50% increased life for 10 seconds. This is just a little bit of extra defensive layer while you're playing the campaign. Now, as far as leveling strategy is concerned, I'm going to recommend you do the campaign on the easiest difficulty you can. Just get through the thing. It's not good XP. A lot of time is wasted playing the campaign. But, you know, if you're a big fan of the story, obviously enjoy yourself. You know, watch all the cutscenes, do the stuff. But if you're like me and you just like gameplay of ARPGs, you don't care about story, I would say just do it on easy, get through it as fast as humanly possible because it's not the best experience. But when you're all said and done with the campaign, for me on the pre-release, I think I was around level 52-ish when I beat the campaign, the story part of the campaign. There will be quests you can do after the campaign is over that will sort of guide you in to the rest of the game. You know, things like doing the Undercity, unlocking the Dark Citadel, getting into the new season journey and the seasonal theme with those hell portals. There's gonna be loads of quests that open up after completing the campaign. So definitely do those as well. If you find yourself like, okay, you're level 52 or whatever, you're level 50, even lower than that. One thing that they've done with the Vessel of Hatred expansion is they made the value of doing strongholds super high. You get 1 level per stronghold, regardless of what level you are, regardless of the difficulty that you're on. So again, when you're done with easy difficulty, just go do strongholds. That's what I recommend you do. That will probably finish off your leveling experience. It'll also unlock the map. You know, it is super important to get these waypoints unlocked. So as you're sort of running around to these strongholds on your map, I would recommend, you know, touching waypoints, get stuff unlocked. But here's a little pro tip that I'm going to give you that maybe not a lot of players will. While you're running around, going to these waypoints, going to these strongholds, you're going to see these events, right? These events have been into the game, you know, since the launch of D4. And the past few seasons, you just kind of like skip them, right? Like they're not new. They're not that exciting. They just give you obols, and the obols have historically been really bad. But I'm going to recommend you do any event you see, do it. Because obols are now super duper strong, especially while leveling. Obols are insane in Vessel of Hatred. And why are they insane is because they give uniques at a much, 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 much higher rate, like really high rate. So this can make getting those uniques you need for your build super duper strong. So get as many obols as you can. That's why I'm gonna recommend you do those events. Anytime you're running around, you see an event, do it. Because obols are really, really good in the early game, like really good. Even in the late game, they're good. But specifically on the SpiritBorn, you're really going to want to roll on rings. There are so many rings available for the SpiritBorn that are so strong while leveling. But specifically for us in this particular setup being poison, the absolute best one is going to be Ring of Writhing Moon. This causes these swarms to orbit around you and generate 1 vigor per enemy hit. This is insanely strong while leveling. And possibly even more strong for leveling is Ring of the Midday Hunt, which says while you have ferocity, and we always have ferocity, not only because of our secondary skill hull choice being Jaguar, but also because of the skill Ravager. But while you have ferocity, your poisonings deal their damage in 33% of their normal duration. This causes our poisons to tick way faster, 66% faster to be exact. But not only that, we get 7 vigor per kill, up to 7 vigor per kill, which is so strong, honestly, for leveling. Now, another thing you can spend your shards on would be the Rod of Kelipeleke. However, it's a weapon, and weapons get upgraded so often as you're leveling. But if you found yourself just sitting on a bunch of additional shards or obols, I mean, you could spend it on quarterstaffs to try to get this, because it is a really a strong leveling item, like really strong. But again, you do upgrade weapons pretty fast, so it might not be the best idea to spend 100 obols on a 2-hand quarterstaff, but it's an option. If you're sitting on a lot and you already have the rings, you're basically done. I would cap your obols to the best of your ability, continuing to build those obols up, because as soon as you hit Torment 1 difficulty, as soon as you unlock that at max level, jump in, because now when you go to spend obols at the Obol vendor, chest, pants, and boots all only cost 25 obols. So if you're sitting at a nice fat stack of obols, when you hit Torment 1 for the first time, you're going to immediately be able to jump in and roll a Jacinth shell, which will be so huge for your damage, so huge for your build in general. This is probably the best item that the SpiritBorn has to offer. And again, it's only 25 obols to spam and try to get one of these. Same thing goes for Temerity. As soon as you get yourself a Jacinth shell, you're going to spam all of your juice on a Temerity, and these go together like peas and carrots. Super strong combination. You're basically done with defenses once you get these two items, especially for T1. After you get these two, I recommend rolling helmets. Get yourself a Harmony of Ebiwaka. Really, really strong early end game helmet. And then lastly, get your hands on a Frostburn pair of gloves. It's going to be super strong. Getting into the poison burn setup that we posted the other day. So yeah, burn all of your obols on rings as you're leveling. Do those events to get more obols. Get yourself both of these rings, Ring of the Midday Hunt, Ring of the Writhing Moon. These will increase your leveling experience like crazy. These other uniques are locked behind Torment 1, so don't go rolling these before Torment 1 thinking you're going to get something. But as soon as you unlock T1, hopefully you have a whole bunch of obols stacked up and you can start rolling chest, then legs, then helmet, and then gloves. It'd be insane to get all of these really early in Torment 1. The helmet slot is actually just really good in general. You can also get your hands on what's called a Loyalties Mantle. While your Spirit Hall choices match, the bonus is 100% more potent, and the base spirit cost is 60% less and have a 60% reduction in cooldown. So if you found yourself getting Loyalties Mantle, what you can do is change both of your Spirit Halls to Centipede. This makes it so that Stinger costs less. Devour has a 60% cooldown reduction, which can be quite strong. Just make sure if you do this, you probably spec out of the Gorilla, put points into something a bit more meaningful for you, but also something to look out for. Helmets are very, very, very strong on the SpiritBorn, like super strong. Some other aspects to look out for while leveling. There is a utility aspect called the Duelist aspect, which increases your maximum ferocity by 5. This will just give you a flat additional 25% attack speed. So between the Jaguar secondary Spirit Hall, it gives you a +1 to maximum, and your base is 4, so you'll get 5. And if you put this aspect on, you'll have 10 ferocity, and that is just 50% attack speed without even trying. It is really, really strong while leveling. So keep your eyes peeled for this drop-only ferocity duelist aspect. There's also a new season blessing coming in Vessel of Hatred Season 6 that allows for a chance to get double rolls from obols. And after you've maxed your XP, probably first, that's going to be the number one thing, because XP is going to be really hard in Season 6 to get up to Paragon 300. So maximize your XP first. But after that, definitely get the obols second. It's super duper strong, especially early game. Okay, so now you're max level. You've got some decent gear if you follow along with this video so far. Luckily, all of that gear basically applies to playing the new Poison Burn SpiritBorn guide that I just released. It is OP, especially for farming, held tight, especially for farming Nightmare Dungeons, which you're going to be doing a lot of in the early end game of Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred. Now, again, do note in that build plan for the Poison Burn that there is a no mythic version. This is obviously what you're going to be chasing first. Mythic uniques will be pretty rare, so you want to be chasing this setup. And pretty much everything we recommended that you get while leveling will be used in this end game setup. So all of that gear is not wasted. But do check out that guide. It is a super strong, super fun way to play, especially once you get the mythic version going. It is just insane. Hopefully this helps a lot of you guys power through the leveling experience of the SpiritBorn. Now, I'm not going to say you should just follow this to the T. Obviously, you should experiment with some SpiritBorn skills. You should experiment, especially with the ultimates. They're all super fun, super useful. So definitely play around with those. But if you're actually just looking to blast through the campaign, I do think that this is absolutely the best way to do it. And again, everything you get along the way helps you sort of merge into the Poison Burn SpiritBorn that I'm going to recommend you start at the end game. Now, I will, of course, be streaming loads of the Vessel of Hatred expansion. I would probably be going like absolutely crazy the first week. Probably a lot of 24-hour streams. You can catch me at twitch.tv Lord_Fluffy. Also, if you guys didn't know, Blizzard's re-enabling the support a streamer campaign. So if you gift 2 subs to your favorite streamer, me, it better be me, then you get a mount. If you get 4 subs, you get a mount with a special armor. And I will say it looks cool. I'm not saying that because I want you to give me subs. I mean, I do want you to give me subs, but it actually does look cool. So if you're wanting to get that in-game mount, do come over to the stream and support a streamer. But if you don't want to give it to me, give it to one of the boys in the Diablo directory, especially the long-term Diablo creators. We all work pretty hard to bring you this content. So anyways, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I'm super hyped for the expansion. Hope you guys are too. Definitely come by the stream and hang out. As always, guys, like, subscribe, come over to Twitch, ask your questions. We love you guys. Peace out.